The alarm system screamed through every corridor of the Dracarian scout ship. Red lights flashed across the control panels as Captain Vexith fought with the steering controls. Her scaled hands moved fast, but nothing responded the way it should. The ship was dying, and they were falling toward the blue planet below. "Hull temperature critical," Zareth called out from his station. He was her second in command, a warrior with dark green scales and sharp eyes that now showed fear. "The atmospheric entry is too steep. We cannot correct it." Vexith bared her teeth in frustration. They had been mapping the system, staying far from the primitive world that the Empire had marked as off-limits. But the solar flare had come without warning, frying their navigation systems and half their power grid. Now they were caught in the gravity well of the very planet they were supposed to avoid. "Kirill, give me anything," Vexith shouted toward the engineering station. "Thrusters, stabilizers, anything that still works." The copper-scaled engineer worked frantically at her console. "The main drive is gone. I have maybe 30% on the port thrusters." "That is all? Then use it. Everyone, secure yourselves." The 5 other crew members strapped into their seats. Young Novak, barely past his first century of life, gripped his controls with white-knuckled hands. The pilot had never faced a real emergency before. This was supposed to be a simple survey mission, his first voyage beyond their home system. The ship hit the upper atmosphere like a stone thrown into water. The hull began to glow, then burn. Pieces of the outer plating tore away, tumbling behind them like falling stars. The ship shook so hard that Vexith thought her bones might break. Her harness cut into her shoulders as the forces tried to tear her from her seat. Through the forward viewport, she saw clouds rushing toward them, white and gray, thick and cold-looking, then ice. Endless white ice stretching in every direction. "Brace for impact," she managed to say, though she knew it would not matter much. The ship hit the frozen ground at a speed that should have killed them all. The forward section crumpled like thin metal. The sound was terrible, a screaming crash of breaking machinery and tearing metal. The lights went out. Then everything went silent except for the howling wind that came through the broken hull. Vexith opened her eyes. She was alive. Her head hurt badly and something warm ran down the side of her face. Blood, she realized. But she could move. She released her harness and fell to the tilted floor. "Report," she called out. Her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. "Here," Zareth answered from somewhere in the darkness. "Injured but functional. Engineering intact," Kirill said. "Mostly," Thessia, their medic, groaned. "I live. Give me a moment." "Novak?" Vexith called. A young voice answered, shaking with pain. "My leg. Something is wrong with my leg," Vexith counted. That was 5 voices, including her own. They had been 8. "Who else?" "Call out." No one answered. In the dim emergency lighting that flickered on, Vexith saw why. 3 of her crew had not survived the crash. She closed her eyes briefly, offering a warrior's prayer for their spirits. Then she pushed the grief aside. The dead were gone. The living needed her. "We need to get out," she said. "This structure is not safe." They helped each other through the broken corridors. Novak could not walk well, so Zareth carried him. When they finally pushed through a tear in the hull, the cold hit them like a physical blow. Vexith had never felt anything like it. The wind cut through her scales and deep into her body. Her breath came out as white clouds. Within seconds, her fingers started to go numb. "What is this temperature?" Thessia asked, her voice already shaking. Kirill checked a portable scanner she had grabbed from the ship. "-28 degrees in your human equivalent scale. With the wind, it feels much colder." Vexith looked around. Ice and snow as far as she could see. No shelter. No warmth, no hope. Their bodies were made for warm climates. They were reptilian, cold-blooded. At these temperatures, their systems would start shutting down within hours. "Maybe a day if they were lucky." "The distress beacon," Zareth said. "We need to activate it." "Already checked," Kirill said quietly. "The communications array was in the forward section. It is destroyed." The words hung in the cold air. They were stranded on a frozen world, billions of miles from home with no way to call for help. Their fleet would not even know where to look. Survey missions went dark for months at a time. By the time anyone came searching, they would be frozen corpses. Vexith made a decision. Back into the ship. "We find the most protected area and we seal it as best we can. We survive as long as we can." They worked together, moving slowly as the cold sapped their strength. They found a section of the ship that still had 3 walls and part of a roof. They dragged in everything they could use. Thermal blankets from the emergency supplies, portable lights, the survival rations. Chiral tried to restart some of the ship's heating systems, but the power core was completely dead. They huddled together in the small space, sharing body heat. It was not enough. Vexith could feel her limbs growing heavy. Her thoughts came slower. She looked at her crew, at their dimming eyes and frost-covered scales. "Captain," Novak said quietly, "are we going to die here?" Vexith wanted to lie to give him hope, but she was a warrior, and warriors face truth. "Yes," she said. "Unless a miracle happens, we will die here. I am sorry I led you to this end." "You did not," Zareth said firmly. "The flare was random. You made the best choices you could. We all knew the risks of space travel," Thessia added. "At least we die together." Not alone. They fell silent after that. There was nothing more to say. They pressed closer, trying to share what little warmth remained in their cold-blooded bodies. Outside, the wind howled like a hunting beast. The sky grew dark as night fell on the frozen wasteland. Vexith thought about her homeworld, warm and green. She thought about her family, who would never know what happened to her. She thought about all the things she would never do, the places she would never see. Then she thought about this planet they had crashed on. Somewhere out there, the primitive inhabitants lived their lives completely unaware that aliens had fallen from the sky. They would never know either. In a few weeks, maybe months, the snow would cover the wreckage. In a few years, it would be buried completely. They would become a mystery, a ghost story. Perhaps one day another Dracarian ship would come here and find the frozen remains. Perhaps not. Perhaps they would simply disappear as if they had never existed at all. The cold grew deeper. One by one, they stopped talking and simply breathed, each breath a little harder than the last. Vexith kept her eyes open as long as she could, refusing to give up even as her body began to fail. 15 miles away at a small research outpost, Jake Morrison stared at his computer screen with confusion. The readings made no sense at all. Massive heat signatures had appeared on his sensors, then faded rapidly. He had been studying glacial temperatures and movements for 3 months in this isolated location, and nothing like this had ever shown up. He looked out the window at the dark landscape. A storm was coming. He should stay inside where it was safe and warm. But the scientist in him was curious. What could cause readings like that? Jake made a decision that would change everything. He began packing his cold weather gear. Whatever was out there, he was going to find it. Jake Morrison had been alone on the glacier for 73 days. He was used to the isolation, used to the cold, used to the endless white landscape, but he was not used to mysterious heat signatures appearing and disappearing from his sensors overnight. He finished loading his snowmobile with supplies. Extra fuel, emergency shelter, food for 3 days, medical kit, and his satellite phone. The wind was already picking up, which meant the storm would hit soon. He had maybe 6 hours before travel became impossible. His supervisor back at the university would be angry if she knew he was heading out in these conditions. But Jake had always been the type to follow his curiosity, even when it was not the smart thing to do. That was how he had ended up studying climate change on a glacier in Iceland, instead of teaching in a warm classroom somewhere. The snowmobile engine roared to life. Jake pulled his goggles down and headed toward the coordinates where the heat readings had appeared. The terrain was rough, full of ice ridges and hidden crevasses. He had to move slowly and carefully, even though part of him wanted to race toward the mystery. It took 4 hours to cover the 15 miles. By the time he saw the crash site, snow was starting to fall. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, a shape that did not belong dark against the white ice. As he got closer, his mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. A ship. Not a boat or a plane, but something else entirely. The hull was made of materials he did not recognize, twisted and broken from impact. Pieces of it were scattered across the ice. The design was wrong, too smooth in some places, too angular in others. Nothing human could have built this. Jake stopped his snowmobile 50 feet away. His heart was pounding. His hands shook, and not from the cold. Every rational part of his brain told him to turn around, to call someone, to let the authorities handle this. But the scientist in him needed to see more. He approached on foot, his boots crunching on the snow. The ship was bigger than he had thought, maybe the size of a small house. Parts of it still looked intact. There was a tear in the hull, like a wound in metal flesh. Then he saw movement inside. Jake froze. Something was in there. Something alive. He should run. He should absolutely run. Instead, he took another step forward. "Hello?" he called out. His voice sounded small against the wind. The movement stopped. Then slowly, carefully, a shape appeared in the opening. Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was like something from a dream or a nightmare. Tall, maybe 7 feet, with a body covered in scales that gleamed dully in the gray light. Wings folded against its back. A long face with intelligent eyes that watched him with what he could only describe as surprise. It looked like a dragon, like something from old stories, but real and solid and right in front of him. The creature made a sound, a series of clicks and chirps that might have been language. Then it reached for something at its belt and pressed a button. A device crackled to life. "Go away, native." The voice was mechanical, clearly coming from a translator. "This does not concern you, native." The word hit Jake hard. These were aliens. Real aliens. And they were here, on Earth, crashed on an Icelandic glacier. "You are hurt," Jake said, forcing his voice to stay steady. He could see now that the creature was shaking, and not just from weakness. Its scales had frost on them. "You are cold, and we are dying," the creature said bluntly. "Your temperatures are too low for our biology. Leave us. Do not risk yourself." More shapes appeared behind the first one, more of the dragon-like aliens, all of them shaking, all of them looking at him with those strange, intelligent eyes. He counted 5 in total. 5 beings from another world, freezing to death on his planet. Jake should have been terrified. Maybe he was underneath the shock. But what he felt most strongly was something else entirely. These were people in whatever form. They were scared and hurt and dying, and he could not just walk away. "I have heating equipment," he said. "At my outpost. I can bring it here." The first creature, the one with darker scales who seemed to be in charge, stared at him. "Why would you help us?" "You do not know us. We are strangers. We could be dangerous." "Because you need help," Jake said simply. "That is enough." He did not wait for an answer. He turned and went back to his snowmobile. His mind was racing. He needed to think. He needed to plan. These beings were cold-blooded, clearly. They needed heat and shelter. He had maybe days, maybe only hours to set something up. The trip back to his outpost took 3 hours. The storm was getting worse. Jake worked fast, loading everything he could think of onto a cargo sled he usually used for equipment. 2 portable generators, 4 electric heaters, a propane burner. Every thermal blanket he had, his entire stock of emergency hand warmers, his winter camping tent, extra fuel, everything. The outpost had a radio. He could call for help. He should call for help. But what would happen then? Governments would come. Military. These aliens would become prisoners or test subjects. Maybe they would be treated well. Maybe not. Jake had seen enough of human history to know that first contact with something different usually did not go well for the different ones. He made a choice. He turned the radio off and left it off. The journey back was harder. The cargo sled was heavy and the visibility was almost 0. But Jake pushed through, following his GPS coordinates. He had spent 3 months on this glacier. He knew how to survive. When he reached the crash site again, he found the aliens still huddled in the broken section of their ship. They looked worse than before. Their movements were slow and clumsy. One of them, a younger one with lighter scales, was not moving at all. Jake did not waste time talking. He set up the generators first, getting them running despite the wind and snow. Then he positioned the heaters around the shelter area, creating a pocket of warmth. He hung thermal blankets to trap the heat, building walls where the ship had none. The aliens watched him work. They did not help, just watched with those strange eyes. Maybe they were too weak. Maybe they just did not understand what he was doing. Jake did not care. He worked through the night, ignoring his own exhaustion. By morning, he had created something almost livable. It was not warm, not really, but it was warmer than outside. The heaters glowed red. The generators hummed steadily. The thermal blankets flapped in the wind but held. Jake finally stopped and looked at the aliens. They had moved closer to the heaters, scales outstretched toward the warmth. The young one who had not been moving was breathing again, shallow but steady. "It is not much," Jake said, "but it is what I have." The leader alien looked at him for a long moment. Then she made a sound, a low rumble that her translator did not convert, but Jake thought he understood anyway. It was gratitude. "I am Vexith," the alien said through her device.
captain of this vessel.
These are my crew. You have given us more than we deserved, human, Jake, he said. My name is Jake Morrison. Why do you do this, Jake Morrison? In our culture, the weak are left to die so they do not burden the strong. You are small. We could kill you easily. Yet you help us, Jake thought about that. He thought about all the reasons, all the philosophy and ethics and morals. But in the end, it came down to something simple. Because where I come from, he said, you do not leave people behind to die. No matter who they are or where they come from. You just do not do it. Vexith tilted her head, a gesture that looked almost bird-like. Your species is strange, Jake Morrison. Yeah, Jake agreed with a tired smile. We really are. He pulled out his sleeping bag and laid it in a corner. The aliens watched as he climbed inside, still fully dressed in his cold weather gear. Within minutes, exhausted from the long night of work, Jake fell asleep. The aliens looked at each other in silence. Then Vexith moved closer to one of the heaters, letting the warmth seep into her scales. She looked down at the sleeping human, this small, fragile creature who had risked his life for strangers. What have we learned today? She asked her crew quietly. Zareth settled near another heater, flexing his fingers as feeling returned to them. That perhaps strength is not only measured in claws and teeth. That this species is either very brave or very foolish, Kirill added, though her voice held something like respect. That we have much to learn about this world, Thessia said softly. She was tending to young Novak, whose leg was badly broken from the crash, and about ourselves. Vexith nodded slowly. They had accepted their deaths. They had made peace with the end, but this human had not accepted it. He had refused to let them die, had worked through the night in dangerous conditions to save them. Why? They were nothing to him. They were not even the same species. We will survive a little longer, Vexith said, thanks to Jake Morrison. If we do die here, we will die knowing that there was kindness in the universe. Even on a frozen world, there was warmth. Outside, the storm howled and raged, but inside the makeshift shelter, 5 aliens and 1 human survived together. It was not much, but it was enough. For now, it was enough. 3 days passed before Jake radioed his base station. His supervisor, Dr. Helen Brooks, was not happy. Morrison, where have you been? You missed 2 check-ins. Jake stood outside the shelter, away from the aliens. Sorry, Helen, I got caught in the storm. I am extending my field research. Found some interesting ice core formations. I need another month. There was a long pause. A month? Jake, your supplies, I have enough. I will call in weekly. Promise. This better be worth it, Helen said, but she approved the extension. She trusted him, which made the lying feel worse. But what else could he do? He could not exactly say he was living with crashed aliens. When he went back inside, Vexith was waiting. You lied to your people. Yes, Jake admitted. He had learned that the translator worked both ways. The aliens could hear English and understand it now. If I tell them about you, others will come. Many others. And I do not think that would be good for any of us right now. You protect us, Vexith said. It was not a question. I am trying. Over the next week, Jake settled into a routine. Every morning he checked the generators and refueled them. He adjusted the heaters to make sure the shelter stayed warm enough. He rationed his food carefully, sharing it with the aliens even though they could not digest most of it well. The aliens had their own rations from the ship, strange packages that smelled like nothing Jake had ever encountered. But their supplies were limited, meant for a short survey mission. They would run out eventually. Jake started fishing through holes in the ice. The Arctic char he caught could be eaten by both species. It was not much, but it helped stretch their supplies. Vexith watched him fish with what looked like curiosity. You are persistent, she said one day as he pulled up a small fish. Like a hunter that never gives up. Humans are good at not giving up, Jake said. It is kind of our thing. He taught them about Earth's environment, about how the Inuit peoples had lived in the Arctic for thousands of years, about how early explorers had survived in conditions like these. The aliens listened with interest and something else. Disbelief, maybe. Your species has no natural armor, Zareth said. No claws, no thick hide, no ability to regulate temperature efficiently. Yet you survived in climates that should kill you. We are stubborn, Jake said with a smile, and we are good at making tools. Kirill, the engineer, was fascinated by this. She started watching everything Jake did, learning how his equipment worked. One day she approached him with pieces from both the alien ship and his own gear. Could we combine these? She asked through the translator. Your heating system is inefficient, but if I connect it to our power cells, even the damaged ones, we might create something better. Jake looked at the parts. Half of it was technology beyond his understanding, but the other half was basic electrical work. Show me what you are thinking. They worked together for 2 days. Kyrill's hands were clumsy at first in the cold, but she learned quickly. Jake showed her how to strip wires, how to create connections, how to insulate against the weather. She showed him alien tech that operated on principles he barely understood. The result was strange but effective. A hybrid heating system that used less fuel and produced more warmth. When they turned it on, the temperature in the shelter rose by 10 degrees. It works, Kyrill said. And if dragons could smile, Jake thought she might be doing it. We make a good team, human Jake. Yeah, he agreed. We do. Thessia, the medic, was another story. She worried constantly about Novak's broken leg. She had done what she could with their medical supplies, but it was not healing well in the cold. The young alien grew weaker each day. Jake remembered his first aid training. Broken bones needed to be set properly and kept immobile. He used materials from the ship to create a better splint, and extra padding from his sleeping bag to cushion it. It was not perfect, but it was better than what they had. Thank you, Thessia said quietly as she worked. In our culture, an injury like this would mean death. The injured one would be left behind so they do not slow the group. That is a terrible culture, Jake said without thinking. Then he winced. Sorry, I did not mean— No, Thessia interrupted. You are right. It is terrible. But it is all we have known. She looked at Novak, who was sleeping fitfully nearby. Until now, Zareth was the hardest to reach. The warrior kept his distance from Jake, watching with suspicious eyes. He did not interfere, but he did not help either. One day Jake asked Vexith about it. Zareth does not trust easily, she explained. In our military, trust must be earned through battle. You have shown us kindness, but that is not a language he speaks well. How do I earn his trust? Survive with us, Vexith said simply. Keep us alive. That is the only battle that matters now. Jake worked harder. He insulated the shelter better, building snow walls around the outside to trap more heat. It was an old technique, creating an igloo-like structure. The aliens watched with interest as he explained how snow could be an insulator when packed correctly. Your species turns weakness into strength, Kyrill observed. You cannot survive the cold naturally, so you build shelter from the cold itself. Adaptation, Jake said. That is what humans do best. But it was not all progress. Jake was tired all the time now. He was not eating enough, giving too much of his food to the aliens. The cold was wearing him down. He developed a cough that would not go away. His hands shook when he worked, Vexith noticed. She ordered him to eat more, in a tone that did not accept argument. When he protested, she simply stared at him until he obeyed. You cannot help us if you die, Jake Morrison, she said. Your species may be stubborn, but even you have limits. You will eat. That is not a request. On the 15th day, Jake woke to find Zareth sitting near him. The warrior alien looked uncomfortable. Why do you do this? Zareth asked bluntly. Why do you sacrifice so much for creatures you do not know? For beings who could hurt you. We have weapons. We have strength. You have nothing to gain from this. Jake thought about how to answer. He was tired, so the truth came easily. Because it is the right thing to do, he said. Because you are people, no matter what you look like. Because if I left you to die, I could not live with myself. Where I come from, we have a saying. We are all in this together. The universe is cold and dark and empty. The least we can do is be warm to each other. Zareth was quiet for a long time. Then he reached out and placed a clawed hand on Jake's shoulder. It could have been a threat. Instead, it felt like respect. You are a warrior, Jake Morrison, Zareth said. Not with weapons, but with spirit. I understand now. I will help you keep us alive. From that day on, Zareth worked alongside Jake. The warrior's strength made many tasks easier. Together, they reinforced the shelter. They hunted for fish. They maintained the equipment. Two very different beings working toward the same goal. Survival. Young Novak improved slightly. The warmth and rest helped his body heal, even if only a little. He started asking Jake questions about Earth, about humanity, about everything. Jake found himself telling stories about his world, about cities and oceans, about different cultures and ways of life. Your world sounds beautiful, Novak said one day. Diverse. So many different types of people all living together. It is not perfect, Jake admitted. We fight. We disagree. Sometimes we hurt each other, but we also help each other. We build things together. We try to be better. That is more than we do, Novak said quietly. We only know strength and conquest. As the weeks passed, the shelter became something more than just a survival space. It became a home of sorts. The aliens learned human habits. Jake learned their ways. They shared stories, taught each other things, found common ground despite being from different worlds. But supplies were running low. The fuel would last maybe another 3 weeks. The food even less. Jake knew they were only delaying the inevitable. Unless something changed, they would all die here together. Still, he kept working. Kept trying, because that was what humans did. They did not give up, even when the situation seemed hopeless. They fought until the very end. One night, as Jake lay in his sleeping bag listening to the wind outside, Vexith spoke into the darkness. Thank you, Jake Morrison. Whatever happens, know that you gave us something we had lost. Hope. And a reason to believe that the universe is not all darkness. Jake did not answer. He could not trust his voice. Instead, he closed his eyes and hoped that somehow, some way, they would find a way through this. The storm outside continued. But inside the shelter, warmth remained. And as long as there was warmth, there was life. As long as there was life, there was hope. Week 5 began with disaster. Jake woke to darkness and cold. The generators had stopped. The heaters were silent. The temperature in the shelter was already dropping fast. Chiral, Vexith called out urgently. What happened? The engineer was already at the generators, working in the dim light of an emergency lamp. Her hands moved quickly, checking connections and fuel lines. After a few minutes, she made a frustrated sound. The fuel line froze, she said. I can fix it, but it will take time. And we are almost out of fuel anyway. Maybe 1 more week at most. Jake felt his heart sink. 1 week. They had 1 week left before the cold would take them all. He had known this moment would come, but knowing it and facing it were different things. Outside, a massive blizzard was building. The wind screamed like a living thing. The temperature had dropped to -40 degrees. Even with the shelter and their makeshift walls, they would not survive long without heat. There is one option, Chiral said slowly. She looked at Vexith. The ship's fusion core. The main one is dead, but there are auxiliary power cells deep in the engine section. Small ones, damaged in the crash. But if we could restart even one of them, it would provide heat and power for months. We tried that already, Zareth said. The access corridor is destroyed. We cannot reach them. I can reach them, Jake said quietly. Everyone looked at him. Vexith shook her head. No, the corridor is too small for us, but it is also unstable. And there is radiation. Our scales protect us somewhat, but your soft skin... I know the risks, Jake interrupted. But if I do not try, we all die anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Jake Morrison, I order you not to do this, Vexith said, her voice hard. I am the captain. I do not send others to die for me. Good thing I do not take orders from you, Jake said with a small smile. I am human. We do not give up. We do not accept the easy death. Show me how to restart the power cell. For a moment, Vexith looked like she might argue further. Then something changed in her eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or resignation. She had learned enough about humans to know that Jake would do this no matter what she said. Chiral showed him the ship's schematics on a damaged data pad. The auxiliary power cells were in a section that had partially collapsed. Jake would have to crawl through tight spaces, past sharp metal and broken systems. Then he would have to manually restart the cell, which meant being close to it while it powered up. The radiation exposure would be significant. You might get sick, Chiral warned. Very sick. Your cells will be damaged. Then you better have your medical supplies ready, Jake said to Thessia. I am doing this, he prepared carefully. He put on every layer of clothing he had. He took a flashlight, tools, and a portable scanner that Chiral modified to show him the power cell status. Vexith gave him her own personal shield generator, a small device that would provide minimal protection against radiation. This is foolish, Zareth said, but he helped Jake prepare, showing him how to move efficiently in tight spaces. Remember, conserve your energy. Move carefully. Do not rush. If you die in there, I will be very angry, Novak said from his corner. The young alien's attempt at humor fell flat, but Jake appreciated it anyway. Jake entered the access corridor through a tear in the hull. Immediately, he understood why the aliens could not fit. The space was barely 2 feet wide in places. He had to crawl on his belly, pushing himself forward with his elbows. The metal was cold even through his gloves. His flashlight showed a path of destruction, twisted metal and sparking wires. He moved carefully, aware that one wrong move could bring more of the structure down on him. It took an hour to reach the engine section. His body hurt from crawling. His hands were numb. But he was there. He shone his light on the power cells. They were smaller than he expected, each about the size of a basketball nestled in protective housings. Most were clearly destroyed, cracked, or melted from the crash. But one in the back looked intact. Its casing was dented but not broken. Jake pulled out the scanner. It showed faint energy readings. The cell was dormant but not dead. Carol had explained the restart sequence. It sounded simple enough. Reconnect 3 power leads. Prime the ignition system. Activate the startup routine. But first he had to remove the safety locks. And the safety locks were inside the cell housing, which meant opening it and exposing himself to whatever radiation was leaking out. Jake activated the shield generator. A faint shimmer appeared around him like heat waves in summer. It would not protect him completely, but it would help. He hoped. He opened the housing. His scanner immediately started beeping warnings. Radiation levels rising. He ignored it and reached inside, following Carol's instructions. Find the first lock. Turn it 90 degrees. Find the second lock. Pull it outward. Find the third lock. Slide it to the left. His hands were shaking from cold or fear or both. The locks were designed for clawed alien hands, not human fingers. He struggled with them, precious seconds ticking by as the radiation exposure built up. Finally, all 3 locks were open. Now for the power leads. He found them. 3 thick cables that had disconnected in the crash. He had to reconnect them in the right order. First the ground, then the positive, then the neutral. Each connection felt like it took forever. His vision was starting to blur. The scanner was screaming at him now, warning of dangerous radiation levels. He felt sick, dizzy. But he was so close, last step. The ignition system. A simple button, really. Press and hold for 5 seconds. The cell would do the rest or it would not. Jake pressed the button. He counted slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The power cell hummed to life. Lights flickered on in the corridor. The hum grew to a steady pulse. Success. Jake tried to crawl back out. His arms would not obey properly. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. He made it maybe 10 feet before he collapsed. He lay on the cold metal, unable to move, thinking that this was a stupid way to die. But at least the aliens would live. At least he had done that much. He heard voices calling his name, felt hands pulling him, dragging him through the narrow corridor. The journey back was a blur of pain and darkness. Then warmth, blessed warmth. The power cell was working. The ship's heating systems were coming back online. Jake woke to find Thessia leaning over him. She was using her medical scanner, her face concerned. Around her the others watched. How bad? Vexith asked. Radiation sickness, Thessia said. Significant cell damage. He will be very ill for several days, but he should survive. His species is more resilient than I expected. Jake tried to speak, but only a croak came out. Kirill pressed a cup of water to his lips. He drank gratefully. You fool, Vexith said, but her voice was soft. You magnificent fool. You nearly died. Did it work? Jake managed to ask. Yes, the power cell is stable. We have heat and power. You saved us, Jake Morrison. Good, Jake said. Then he passed out again. For 3 days he drifted in and out of consciousness. He was sick in ways he had never been before. Fever, nausea, pain in every part of his body. But Thessia watched over him constantly, using her alien medicine as best she could. The others took turns sitting with him, keeping him warm, making sure he was never alone. On the 4th day, he woke with a clear head. He was weak but alive. He sat up slowly and found Vexith sitting nearby. Welcome back, she said. We were worried. How long? 4 days. The sickness has passed the worst point. You will recover, Thessia says. Jake looked around the shelter. It was warm now, properly warm. The lights were steady. They had done it. They had survived. There is something you should know, Vexith said. While you slept, we had time to think. About many things. About what you have done for us. About our culture and beliefs. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We teach that only the strong deserve to survive. That weakness must be culled. That helping others is wasteful. But you have shown us that we are wrong. You, a weak human by our standards, have saved us all. Through intelligence, determination, and something we do not have a word for, the willingness to sacrifice yourself for others. Compassion, Jake said quietly. We call it compassion. Compassion, Vexith repeated. Yes, we have forgotten compassion. But you have reminded us, and we are grateful. Zareth stepped forward. You are a warrior, Jake Morrison. Not like our warriors, but better in ways that matter. You have earned our respect and our loyalty. Young Novak called from his corner. You are like fire, Jake. You bring warmth where there is cold. You bring light where there is darkness. You are Firebringer. Jake felt tears in his eyes. He was too tired to hide them. These aliens, these dragon-like beings from another world, had become his friends, his family in a way, and somehow he had changed them, just as they had changed him. I have one question, Jake said when he could speak again. Your culture says only the strong survive. But you have been protecting Novak all this time, even when you thought you would all die. Why? The silence that followed was profound. Vexith looked at Novak, then at her crew, then back at Jake. I do not know, she said slowly. We acted without thinking. We just could not leave him. Does that mean? It means you already had compassion, Jake said. You just did not recognize it. You just did not know what to call it. Kirill moved to sit near them. Then perhaps our culture is not as right as we thought. Perhaps strength is not everything. Perhaps there is another way. Week 6 brought change. With the power cell working, Kirill was able to restore more of the ship's systems. Not the main drive or the navigation, but smaller things. Internal lights, environmental controls, and most importantly, communications. The distress beacon, Kirill said one morning, her eyes bright with excitement. I think I can repair it. Not fully, but enough to send a signal. Jake felt his stomach twist. This was what they needed. Rescue for the aliens. But it also meant the end of their isolation. Once that signal went out, everything would change. Vexith saw his expression. You are worried. When your people come, what happens to Earth? To humanity? I do not know, Vexith admitted. The Empire has rules about primitive worlds. We are supposed to observe only, never interfere. We have already broken that rule by crashing here, and you have seen us. You know we exist. Your leaders will want to know about us, Jake said. They will want to study us. Or worse, perhaps, Vexith said, or perhaps after what we have learned here, we can convince them that humans are worth knowing. Not as subjects or primitives, but as equals. You have shown us a better way, Jake Morrison. Let us show them. Over the next week, Kirill and Jake worked together to repair the distress beacon. It required cannibalizing parts from other systems, creative rewiring, and several moments where Jake thought they would never get it working. But finally it was ready. Once we activate this, the signal will reach our fleet in approximately 6 standard days, Kirill explained. Rescue ships will arrive within 2 days after that. 8 days, Jake said. We have 8 days to prepare. He spent those days teaching the aliens more about Earth and humanity, about their history, their culture, their diversity, about their wars and their peace efforts, about their art and their science. He wanted Vexith to have as complete a picture as possible. The aliens, in turn, taught him about their empire, about worlds they had conquered, species they had subjugated, about their philosophy of strength and their military traditions. It was not comfortable learning. These were not a gentle people. They were predators, warriors, conquerors. But Jake also saw how they had changed, how they now questioned things they had never questioned before, how they looked at him with respect instead of contempt, how they protected each other, all of them, even the weakest. On the 7th day, Vexith made a decision. She activated the distress beacon. The signal pulsed out into space, calling for help, calling for home. Now we wait, she said. Those 8 days were strange. Everyone knew their time together was ending, but no one wanted to talk about it. They went through their routines, shared their meals, told their stories. Jake taught Novak a card game using cards he made from paper. Zareth showed Jake basic self-defense moves from Dracarian combat training. Thessia shared songs from her world, wordless melodies that sounded like wind chimes. On the 8th day, the ship came. Jake saw it first, a dark shape descending from the sky. Bigger than the scout ship, sleeker and more dangerous looking. A military vessel. The aliens came out of the shelter to watch it land. Jake stood with them, feeling small and exposed. The rescue ship touched down 100 yards away, ice and snow swirling around it. A hatch opened. Dracarians emerged, armed and armored. The leader approached. He was bigger than Vexith, his scales a deep crimson. He looked at the crash site, at the makeshift shelter, at the survivors. Then his eyes locked on Jake. "Explain," he said in a voice like grinding stones. His translator was much better than the one Vexith had. Vexith stepped forward. "Commander Mordax, I am Captain Vexith of survey ship Silverwing. We crashed 6 weeks ago. This human, Jake Morrison, saved our lives. Without him, we would have died." Mordax stared at Jake with obvious distaste. "You revealed yourself to a primitive. You violated first contact protocols. This is a serious offense, Captain." "The crash revealed us," Vexith said calmly. "Jake Morrison could have reported us to his authorities. He could have let us die. He did neither. Instead, he risked his life repeatedly to keep us alive. He showed us compassion and taught us things about ourselves that we had forgotten." "Compassion," Mordax said the word like it was poison. "The Empire does not value compassion, Captain. We value strength." "Then the Empire is wrong," Vexith said flatly. The rescue crew reacted with shock. Several made angry sounds. Mordax took a step forward, clearly furious, but Vexith held her ground. "This human has more strength than any warrior I have known," she continued. "Not physical strength, but strength of spirit. He faced impossible conditions to help strangers. He nearly died from radiation to restore our power. He shared his food when he had barely enough for himself. If that is not strength, Commander, then I do not know what is." Zareth moved to stand beside Vexith. "The captain speaks truth. Jake Morrison is a warrior. I vouch for him." Kirill joined them. "He has the mind of an engineer and the heart of a leader. I vouch for him." Thessia stepped forward despite her lingering weakness. "He cared for us when we were dying. I vouch for him." Even young Novak limped forward, leaning on a makeshift crutch. "He is the firebringer. He gave us hope. I vouch for him." The rescue crew watched in silence. Mordax looked at his stranded scouts, at their determination, at the human standing quietly among them. His expression was unreadable. "The human will come with us," Mordax said finally. "The council will decide what to do with him." "And with all of you?" "No," Jake said. It was the first time he had spoken. "I appreciate the offer, but this is my world. My home. I am staying. You have no choice, human. You know too much. You are a security risk, then make me not a risk," Jake said calmly. "You have seen what your people reported. You know they are telling the truth. I helped them because it was right, not because I wanted anything from you. Let me go home. Let me keep this secret. When the time comes for formal contact, I will be there. But until then, let me live my life. Why should I trust you?" "Because," when Jake said, "where I come from, we keep our promises. Ask your scouts. Ask them if I have ever lied to them." Mordax looked at Vexith. She nodded. "He has never lied. Not once in 6 weeks. His word is solid." The commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a gesture Jake did not understand. The rescue crew relaxed slightly. A decision had been made. "Very well, human. You may return to your life. But know that we will be watching. If you break this trust, there will be consequences. For you and for your world." "Understood," Jake said. The rescue crew began preparing the survivors for transport. Medical equipment was brought out. Novak was placed on a stretcher. Thessia went with him, still monitoring his condition. Kirill looked back at the shelter one last time, at the hybrid heating system they had built together. Zareth approached Jake and placed a clawed hand on his shoulder. "You are a warrior, Jake Morrison. Walk your path with honor. You too, Zareth. Stay safe out there." The warrior nodded and moved to join his crew. Vexith was the last to leave. She stood before Jake, looking down at him with those intelligent alien eyes. For a moment, neither spoke. What was there to say? How do you summarize 6 weeks of survival, of learning, of change? "Thank you," Vexith said simply. "For everything. For our lives. For our lesson. For showing us that there is more to existence than conquest and strength." "Thank you for trusting me," Jake replied. "For teaching me about your world. For being my friends." "Friends," Vexith repeated. "Yes, that is what we are. And friends do not forget each other." She reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a small object, a metal disc engraved with symbols Jake did not recognize. She pressed it into his hand. "This is a beacon," she explained. "Not a distress signal, but a communication device. When we make formal contact with Earth, and we will, this will let you reach me. Use it if you need help. Use it if your world needs help. Use it if you just want to talk to an old friend." Jake closed his fingers around the disk. It was warm as if it held its own heat. I will treasure this. I have submitted my report to the Empire, Vexith said. I recommended that when we make formal contact, it should be peaceful. That humans should be offered alliance, not subjugation. I do not know if they will listen. But I will keep arguing. You have changed us, Jake Morrison, and we will use that change to try to change others. That is all anyone can ask, Jake said. Just try. That is what humans do. We keep trying no matter how hard it gets. Yes, Vexith said softly. I understand that now. Commander Mordax called for her. It was time to go. Vexith touched Jake's face gently with one clawed finger, a gesture of affection in her culture. Then she turned and walked to the ship. Jake watched as the Dracarians boarded, watched as the hatches closed, watched as the engines powered up and the vessel lifted into the sky. It climbed higher and higher, becoming a dot, then a speck, then nothing at all. He stood alone on the ice. The shelter still stood behind him, a testament to their time together. The generators were silent now, their fuel exhausted. The thermal blankets flapped in the wind. It already looked abandoned, like a relic from another time. Jake pulled out his satellite phone. It was time to face the world again. Time to explain his absence, to resume his research, to pretend that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. He had changed. And somewhere out in the stars, 5 aliens were changed too. 3 years later, the Dracarian Empire.